In the soft morning light of Riverstone, Virginia, no one would have guessed that a seemingly ordinary 90-year-old woman was about to become the protagonist of an inspiring and unexpected story. This small, peaceful town with its red brick streets and charming old houses seemed like a place where time slowed down, allowing its residents to savor the rare serenity of modern life. Margaret Peggy Thompson, a petite woman with neatly pinned silver hair, had spent almost her entire life here. Peggy wasn't someone who sought attention. She was simply an inseparable part of Riverstone's community. Every morning, she drove her old silver Ford Taurus to Mike's Gas and Go, a gas station she had frequented for over 30 years. For Peggy, it wasn't just a place to refuel. It was also where she caught up with familiar faces and was welcomed by warm smiles. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson." Jimmy, the young gas station attendant, was always the first to greet her. With his bright smile and boundless energy, Jimmy didn't just see Peggy as a customer. He thought of her as family, like a beloved grandmother. "The usual, Jimmy," Peggy replied in her calm, kind voice. She stepped out of her car slowly, her wrinkled hands steady as they reached for the gas pump. This little gas station had witnessed Riverstone's many changes, but one thing remained constant: Peggy's gentle presence, exuding warmth and humility. The tranquil moments passed, accompanied by the fresh morning air mixed with the familiar scent of gasoline. Peggy wasn't in a hurry. She savored each moment as if it were a precious part of her day. But life has a way of disrupting peace when you least expect it. In the distance, the roar of motorcycle engines began to rise, faint at first, then louder and more menacing, like a thunderstorm rolling in. Jimmy turned his head toward the main road, where sleek black motorcycles were speeding toward the gas station. Within moments, 15 motorcycles had invaded the lot, their engines growling aggressively as if to devour the quiet morning. "Shadow Vipers," Jimmy muttered under his breath, his face pale. This infamous motorcycle gang was no stranger to the residents of Riverstone. Known for their history of violence and intimidation, they had terrorized nearby areas for years. But this was the first time they had shown up at Mike's Gas and Go. From the center of the group, a tall man dismounted a glossy black motorcycle. He wore a leather jacket adorned with tattoos and skull emblems, exuding danger and cold arrogance. This was Havoc, the gang's leader, a name that alone was enough to make most people shudder. Havoc's gaze fell on Peggy, who was still calmly refueling her car. A smirk spread across his face as he walked closer, his boots crunching against the gravel. "Well, what do we have here?" he sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "A grandma out for her morning drive? What's the occasion? Treating herself to a new ride, maybe?" But Havoc didn't know Peggy. She wasn't like anyone he had ever met. Unfazed by his presence, Peggy finished pumping gas and turned to face him, her calm yet piercing eyes meeting his cold stare. "I don't know who you think you are," she said, her voice steady and unyielding, "but respect is something you earn, not something you bully out of people." Peggy's words hit Havoc like a slap to the face, leaving him momentarily stunned. But anger quickly replaced his shock, and his expression darkened. Striding toward her, he grabbed her arm with a force that would have intimidated most people. "Who do you think you are, talking to me like that?" he growled, his voice filled with menace. Peggy didn't flinch. Her eyes, unwavering and commanding, held a strength that belied her age. "You've crossed the line, Havoc," she said firmly. Havoc let out a loud, mocking laugh, but it didn't last long. Peggy reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, dialing a number with practiced precision. She didn't say much, just a few words exchanged with the person on the other end. "Iron Jack, it's Peggy," she said, her voice calm but filled with purpose. The man on the other end of the line was none other than Colonel Jack, Iron Jack Morrison, a fellow veteran who had fought alongside Peggy in the brutal battles of Vietnam. Peggy's call wasn't just a request for help, it was a summons to the veterans who owed their lives to her. A call to those she had rescued from life-threatening situations during the war. These weren't just old comrades, they were men who would readily rise to protect the person who once protected them. Responding to Peggy's call, Iron Jack and over 50 veterans arrived at the gas station with an air of strength and authority that only those who had faced death could carry. Every step they took reminded onlookers of the brutal memories of Vietnam, a time when courage, camaraderie, and sacrifice defined their lives. Jimmy, the young gas station attendant, stood behind the counter, unable to believe what he was witnessing. "What's happening here?" he murmured, his eyes wide as he watched these men, former battlefield heroes, dismount their motorcycles with purpose and discipline. Havoc, the leader of the Shadow Vipers gang, initially kept his mocking smile and arrogant demeanor. However, that smirk quickly faded as the veterans' motorcycles formed an orderly perimeter around the station, their presence like a strategic military formation. Iron Jack, the leader of the veterans, fixed a cold, unwavering gaze on Havoc. Without hesitation, Jack approached him and spoke firmly. "You shouldn't be causing trouble here, Havoc. Peggy isn't someone you can mess with." The Shadow Vipers were quickly outmatched, not just in numbers, but in spirit. The men standing before them weren't just ordinary bikers. They were seasoned warriors who had faced far greater dangers than a street gang could ever pose. A tense silence hung in the air as Havoc, for the first time, felt genuine unease. But the story didn't stop at the veterans' dominance. Peggy, with her calm wisdom, understood that true victory wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about transforming them. Stepping forward amidst the charged atmosphere, Peggy spoke, her voice steady and resolute. "If you really want to prove your strength, use it to build, not destroy." Her words weren't just a warning to Havoc and his gang. They were an invitation, a chance for redemption. Iron Jack and the veterans soon partnered with Peggy and the Riverstone community to embark on a new journey. They organized training sessions for Shadow Vipers members who wished to leave the gang, teaching them new skills to earn a living and providing opportunities to rebuild their lives. The initial days were far from easy. Havoc, in particular, was resistant and refused to accept help. But as time passed, he began to see that Peggy and the veterans weren't the enemies he had imagined. Instead, they were the only ones offering him and his gang a genuine chance to change. Riverstone, once a small town terrorized by the gang, began to transform into a symbol of unity and compassion. The townspeople joined in the community activities organized by the veterans, and local businesses that had been threatened and extorted by the Shadow Vipers now felt secure under the veterans' protection. One day, Havoc, the man who had once spread fear, stood before the entire town during a community meeting. With a deep, humbled voice, he said, "I was wrong. Thank you, Mrs. Peggy, for giving me a chance to start over. I can't erase what I've done in the past, but I can try to become a better person." His words struck a chord with everyone present. Tears welled up in the eyes of many who had once suffered under his reign of terror. It wasn't just a moment of forgiveness, it was the first step toward healing. Peggy's story quickly spread beyond the borders of Riverstone, inspiring people far and wide. The townsfolk began to feel a renewed sense of pride in their community, in the way they had come together to overcome adversity and build a brighter future. The veterans, with their experience and determination, established a community center for those seeking a fresh start. The center offered vocational training, counseling, and a safe space for sharing stories, reminding everyone that they were never alone in their struggles. Despite being 90 years old, Peggy actively participated in every town initiative. She often said, "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future." Forgiveness and compassion are the ways we create miracles. Riverstone, once a forgotten town, became a beacon of transformation. Veterans, former gang members, and townspeople proved that when people unite and believe in one another, nothing is impossible. Peggy's story isn't just one of courage and resilience. It's a testament to the power of compassion and humanity's capacity for change. In a world full of challenges and hardships, we always have a choice: to confront hatred or to build with love. Riverstone chose the latter, and this story will continue to inspire generations to come. As Peggy once said, "The greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies, it's turning them into allies." If you feel inspired by this story, remember that each of us holds the power to change our lives and the lives of those around us. Spread love and compassion to make this world a better place. Peggy's story is not just about standing up to a gang. It's a profound lesson in courage, forgiveness, and the human capacity for change. At 90 years old, Peggy, a former helicopter pilot, demonstrated that true strength doesn't lie in age or weapons, but in willpower and love. Her actions reminded everyone that even the smallest acts of courage and compassion can ignite meaningful change. Today, Riverstone is more than a peaceful town. It has become a symbol of transformation and hope. Former gang members from the Shadow Vipers now work alongside veterans to rebuild businesses, support struggling families, and organize community events. This once fractured town has come together, united by a shared belief in the power of redemption and renewal. During a community gathering, Peggy shared these powerful words. "We cannot change the past, but we can shape the future. Forgiveness and compassion are how we create miracles." Her message resonated deeply, not just with those present, but with everyone who has heard her story since. It reminds us that no matter the challenges or adversities we face, the light of love and belief in human goodness will always prevail. Peggy's story doesn't end in Riverstone. It is a universal reminder that we all have the power to create change, no matter how small or overwhelming the circumstances may seem. Her actions inspired an entire town to rebuild and thrive, and they can inspire us to do the same in our own lives. If Peggy's story has touched your heart, don't miss the chance to hear more stories like this. Subscribe to Life Stories 365, where each tale reminds us of the courage and kindness within us all. Every story is a journey of growth, resilience, and the discovery of what truly matters in life. Hit the subscribe button and join us in spreading positive values to the world. Together, we'll continue to share stories of bravery, transformation, and meaning that inspire and uplift. Thank you for being a part of this journey. We'll see you in the next story.